Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're zooming in on Frankfort, Kentucky. Now, if you're picturing a huge state capital, Frankfort's quite different.
Oh, definitely. It's a real find, actually. It's the fourth smallest capital in the U.S., less than 30,000 people.
Right. But it's absolutely brimming with unique things to experience.
That's what we found. We've gathered, local guides, historical bits, some food tips.
Yeah.
Really trying to get under the skin of Frankfort.
So the goal here is to give you a solid overview, hit the highlights, but keep it digestible. No information overload.
Exactly. You're fast-tracked to understanding what makes this smaller capital so interesting.
And the range is pretty impressive, isn't it? Bourbon, history, nature, even food.
Absolutely. It covers a lot of ground.
Okay, so get ready. We're about to take that deep dive. We'll mix the big picture with some memorable details.
Sounds good. So where do you start in Frankfort? A lot of our sources point towards the Kentucky State Capitol building.
Makes sense. It's not just, government buildings. It's quite the looker.
It really is. That Beaux-Arts architecture, very grand, very French-inspired, gives it a real presence.
And you can go inside, right? Take a tour. Imagine standing under that huge dome.
Yeah, and seeing the statues like Abraham Lincoln. It's impressive.
That architectural style, Beaux-Arts, it was big around the turn of the 20th century, kind of symbolized civic pride, progress.
Right. It shows Kentucky's aspirations back then. And the tours, they really bring the state's history to life. Expert guides.
Giving you the stories behind it all. And you might even catch the legislature in session.
Could happen. But one thing that kept coming up were the murals inside. Apparently they're quite striking. A visual history of Kentucky.
Okay, murals noted. Now let's shift gears a bit. We can't talk Kentucky without talking bourbon.
Definitely not. And Frankfort is right smack in the middle of the Kentucky Bourbon Trail. Essential stop for bourbon fans.
Or even just history buffs, right? Because Buffalo Trace Distillery is there.
Oh yeah, Buffalo Trace, huge. It's not just making bourbon now, it's a place deeply connected to the whole history of distilling in America.
And they have different tours. I saw something about a Trace tour and a Taylor tour.
That's right. The Trace tour is more about the modern process, how they make bourbon today, the sour mash, all that.
Okay.
But the Taylor tour, that one takes you back. You see the original distillery buildings, old equipment, kind of a history lesson you can touch.
That sounds fascinating.
Yeah.
And it's not just looking, is it? You can ask questions, sample a bourbon.
Absolutely. Engage with the process, ask the guides anything. Yeah. And yes, there's sampling, plus the obligatory gift shop stop, of course.
Naturally. And we should mention, the Bourbon Trail isn't just Frankfort. It connects out to Lexington, Louisville, lots of distilleries, historic places, fancy tastings.
Right. It's a whole regional experience. But having Buffalo Trace right there really anchors Frankfort in that bourbon identity.
Yeah.
It's economically important, culturally important.
Speaking of the landscape shaping things, let's talk about the Kentucky River. Offers a totally different view of the area.
Yeah, forget the roads for a minute. Picture floating down the river on the Bourbon Belle.
A riverboat cruise. That sounds lovely. What do you see?
Well, you get this unique perspective, right? Passing the state capitol building again, but from the water. Seeing the hilly shoreline and on a historic boat.
Nice.
And you learn about the river's role in Kentucky's history, spot old buildings, see natural features like limestone cliffs. It's scenic and informative.
Plus, maybe grab a bite on board. They mentioned local food being available.
Yeah, adds to the whole experience. But if you want something more active...
Kayaking, canoeing.
Exactly. You can rent gear from places like Canoe, Kentucky and get out on the river yourself. Fishing, too.
So you could, paddle past the Capitol building. Or even Buffalo Trace.
Some tours actually combine paddling with a stop at Buffalo Trace. Arrive by water. How cool is that?
Very cool. Just remember the fishing license if you're going out on your own, right? Unless it's a private trip.
Good point. Always check the regulations.
Okay, shifting focus again. Let's dig into Frankfort's history beyond the bourbon. The Frankfort Cemetery. Maybe not the first tourist spot you think of.
Maybe not, but it's historically significant and apparently quite beautiful. People go to see graves of famous folks, but also just for the views.
Daniel Boone's grave is there, right? That's a big draw.
It is. Though it's worth noting, the history around figures like Boone is complex. Sources mention his ownership of enslaved people, which is an important part of the full story.
Right, context matters. But the cemetery itself, especially spring or fall, sounds lovely. They even offer tours.
Uh-huh. And for a deeper dive into state history, there's the Kentucky Historical Society, founded way back in 1836.
Wow, that's old. Their mission is preserving and sharing the state's story. And they have a main museum.
Yes, The Thomas D. Clark Center for Kentucky History sounds like a must-see. Lots of exhibits.
Covering what kind of ground?
Pretty much everything, from Native American history right through to Lincoln, Boone. They even have recreated frontier homes, and of course, bourbon history pops up again.
Naturally. And artifacts, too, like Lincoln stuff or Governor Goebels.
Exactly. Seeing actual objects connected to these figures, that makes history feel very real.
And then there's the old state capitol, another piece of early state history.
Built in 1830, Greek Revival style, very imposing.
I read its entrance is modeled after a Greek temple, Minerva Polias.
Yeah, the Temple of Minerva Polias, a real statement piece for the time. And the inside sounds just as impressive. Marble staircase, old chambers.
Original chandeliers, early state artifacts. Sounds like stepping back in time. Tours available there, too.
Yep, guided tours to explain it all.
And we can't forget the current governor's mansion, still in use, right? Since 1914.
That's right. It's described as a really impressive building on its own, and you can actually tour parts of it.
Really? See the halls, rooms, art?
Apparently so. See the historical collection. Sometimes they even have art exhibits or special events there. Adds another layer.
Okay, from human history to natural history, the Salado Wildlife Education Center. Sounds like a place to see local animals.
It does. A chance to see Kentucky wildlife like black bears, deer, catfish up close.
And it's not just a zoo, right? It's about education.
Exactly. Learning about their lives, their ecosystems, and what the state does for conservation seems very focused on that educational aspect.
They even have workshops sometimes. Wildlife art, lectures.
Really engaging the community. Just keep in mind they're usually closed in the winter.
Good tip. Okay, all this exploring definitely works up an appetite. And Frankfort's food scene sounds surprisingly good for its size.
It really does. Our sources highlighted starting downtown, maybe at a cafe like Bee's Bakery. Simple, local start.
And then there's the fried chicken reputation.
Oh, yeah. Big Daddy's Fried Chicken got a specific shout out. Sounds like a local institution.
But other options too, like hot chicken if you like some spice.
Right. And for a proper dinner, places like Limewater Bistro or the Ashbrook Hotel restaurant were recommended. Sounded a bit more upscale.
Good to have options. And for later, if you're out and about.
Bourbon on Main and Brown Barrel were mentioned for late-night bites or drinks.
Makes sense, given the bourbon focus. But interestingly, it's not just bourbon, is it? There's beer, too.
Yeah, the craft beer scene seems noteworthy, even if bourbon gets the spotlight. You can do brewery tours.
Like at Sig Lesher Brewery. Sample local stuff, meet the brewers.
Exactly. Get that direct connection. And then there's a West 6th Brewery Farm Tour. That sounds pretty unique.
Farm tour. So not just the brewery.
Right. For beer and cider fans, you can walk through their orchard, see the brewing side. It's more than just tasting. It's seeing the whole process, field to glass almost.
That sounds really interesting, a different angle on the local craft scene.
So yeah, wrapping up this deep dive, it's pretty clear Frankfort packs a lot into its small size.
Definitely. History, bourbon obviously, but also nature, the river, that food scene, even craft beer, something for almost everyone.
It really challenges that idea that a capital city has to be massive to be interesting, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. So much depth, so many surprises.
So thinking about all this, the blend of history, nature, local craft, what part of Frankfort's story really grabs your attention? What makes you maybe want to, look into it a bit more yourself?